program is called NSCI Responds, the basics of navigating the financial instability and our current times, responding to your questions that we've gathered from young professionals in our community, asking about our current financial climate, and asking our experts questions about how they each can navigate these times themselves. Got an awesome group of people that I get to speak with this afternoon. Let me introduce them to you. What we'd invite you to do as you're watching, as you're participating, go ahead and offer comments. You can even offer questions in our chat box on Facebook. Go ahead and like and react with all of the many emotions that you might experience as we have our discussion here. Again, we thank you for joining us. And to our panelists, thank you. I want to introduce you to Elise Glink. Elise is an award-winning, nationally syndicated columnist who writes about topics related to money and personal finance. She has written more than a dozen books, can be heard regularly on WGN radio, and is the founder of 4 Chicago-based companies. It's excited to have Ron Sonnenthal with us. Ron is a partner with Deloitte and has over 36 years of public accounting experience. For his entire career, Ron has been active within the community. For us, Ron, you are a past president of North Shore Congregation Israel. Real clout here in this space. And Ted Pickus. Ted has over 25 years of residential construction and development experience, vast real estate experience. Ted, you say that your career actually began around 10 years old when you worked in your father's company. And of course, you have built a business and great experience on your own ever since.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you each for joining us. Now, I want to start with a question for each of you, and I'll call, maybe we'll do alphabetical order, Elise and then Ron and Ted. Where are you right now in your professional life? Where are you spending most of your professional energy?
So first of all, thanks, Rabbi, for having me. And it's nice to be here with my esteemed colleagues. I think it'll be a good discussion today. What I spend most of my time doing is pretty much divided into 2 things, but all focused around one kind of mission of my career, which is to help people make smarter decisions with their money. I do it with my syndicated column or my books, the media appearances I do, but I also do it for the company that I started 3 years ago called Best Money Moves, which is a financial wellness platform. We help people measure financial stress, and who knew that we would have so much of it right now? I mean, we've had a lot anyway the last 4 or 5 years, really even 10 years for the vast majority of Americans. And I think that there's some statistics that get bandied about all the time, like 78% of Americans can't even pay their monthly bills. And I'm not sure what we think when we hear that number, but we're watching it play out in real time. Just in the last 6 weeks, we've watched 30 million Americans lose their jobs. We've watched 7% of all homeowners who have a mortgage go into forbearance. There's 10 million Americans who are at risk of getting their home foreclosed on because their lenders aren't doing forbearance programs. We've watched the number of people who have opted for credit card forbearance completely zoom, while we've watched spending drop by more than 30%. So there've been some pretty monumental changes going on in the economy. And dramatically, with the companies that we work with Best Money Moves, covering hundreds of thousands of employees, it's been startling to see that people are really desperate. They're desperate on so many levels, for information, for solace, for tools, and for cash itself. And we wonder and we worry every single day about everybody in America.
Thank you. A story that I shared with each of you as we spoke before this panel is, my name is Ryan. I am 32 years old. And in 2008, 2009, I was graduating college, navigating a financial climate such as this. And I know this is different than it was in 2008, but there are some similarities. This is my first time. And this is the first time navigating such a climate for so many of our young professionals who are joining us here on Facebook. And so I really appreciate all three of you. At least I appreciate what you shared, painting a picture of what's happening globally. And we'll dive deeper now as we continue to talk about tools and resources and opinions that might help guide the way that we live in these next days and these next months, particularly as it entails our finances and the financial decisions we make. Rana, what about you? Where are you spending most of your professional energy now?
So I work for Deloitte, which is a big global accounting firm. For years, I ran a practice, I ran something nationally, and I was very domestically focused. Now, most of my time is spent internationally. So I work with our offices around the world. Right now I'm spending time, well, when I was spending time there, I was spending time in South Korea, Turkey, Israel. I work with offices in Africa and other parts of Asia, as well as South America. So I have been watching what's going on in all these different countries. So when you talk about globally, that's where I work. That's where I spend most of my time. As of late, my wife has told me she talked to me more when I was in Korea than I do now. What I've noticed, and I wonder if other people out there are noticing this too, there was work and there was home, and now there's a big blurring here for me. So, it used to be if I was in Korea, I was focusing on Korea. Now, I've had calls this morning at 7 a.m. with Turkey. I talked to Israel at, a little bit later after that. I talked to Russia after that, and I've got calls at night with Asia. So it's starting to be a little bit more of a 24/7 thing, and I'm working on how to balance that a little bit.
Thank you. Thank you. Ted, tell us, how are you spending your professional energy now, or most of it?
So as you had mentioned, Rabbi, I sell residential real estate. I'm based out of Highland Park. That's really the core of where my business is out of. And the atmosphere has obviously totally changed for the real estate market, but we have adapted by still showing homes. Actually, when the stay came into place, that first week, Highland Park, for a week span a year ago, had 300 plus showings. The first week of the stay, there was 40 showings. So you can see the dramatic change. Now, last week, we had over 150 showings. So we are learning how to navigate through this time by wearing masks, by wearing gloves, by actually cutting down the number of showings, because we're virtually showing people homes online. I was just yesterday with a videographer at a house, putting on a house on the market, and I'm videoing it. Luckily, a lot of my houses that I have had on the market are videoed, but now it's essential. So my day has changed considerably, of not only trying to make sure everyone's properties that I have listed are virtually online, floor plans and whatnot, but actually trying to inform everyone where the market is, because that's really what they want to know, is what's happening in the marketplace. And I think that's what we're going to get into here as we dive a little deeper into our conversation.
Thank you. So I've asked for questions from our young professional community at NSCI, and generally the questions fall into a couple different categories. Of course, one of them is housing. People are considering the rentals that they have, considering their plans for purchasing a home. Maybe they recently purchased a home, they're thinking about the financing around it. Certainly we're thinking about jobs. We're thinking about continuing the work we're doing. Some are seeking jobs. Some people started seeking jobs before this current situation, and perhaps plans have changed a bit. Another major issue for us in this demographic is our student debt, the amount of money that each of us have carried after completing our studies and have taken into where we are here. And of course, universally across the board, the comments that I received around, how do I get out of my parents' house? right? And how do I form the legs underneath me to begin life here in this uncertain and this trying time? And so I want to start with one question that we received, and let's begin with you, Ron. One of the questions that we got is, if, let's just say, I was fortunate enough to start a retirement fund, to begin planning for a future, now in these uncertain times, in this moment, do I continue to pay into future plans, or should I reserve that extra cash and hold on to it for use that I might need now?
So I think you have to look at each, obviously each person has a little bit different story, right? But in general, I would say you want to make sure you have some sort of emergency fund built up, right? And people will tell you different amounts it should be, but you ought to have a couple months of cash or stashed away for an emergency fund. After that, I think if you can afford it, you should continue putting into the fund. But over the long period of time, the power of compounding is something you can't catch up. There's a lot of, I won't get into the math, but starting when you're 25, if you wait till you're 35, you'll never catch up, right? So you need that early start. So as long as you've got some sort of cash protection there, I would continue doing it. You could always stop. You could always deal with it if you needed to. You could borrow. You could do a lot of other things. But I think the answer, as best you can, is to continue doing it if you can. I don't know if Elise or Ted, you guys have any thoughts on that?
Well, just to echo what you said, if you put, $2,000 in every single year, 10,000 total, 20,000 total from the time you're 25 to 35, you're exactly right, Ron. You'll end up with far more money, even if you never put in another dime, than if you start at 35 and go to 65. That is the power of compounding. So there's really a pull, right? Because the three of us know, unlike you, Rabbi, the three of us know that time actually marches forward quite quickly. And you can't even believe that the years are slipping by. I personally can't believe we're already in May. So, when you start having kids and you buy a house and, you get on with your life, you're looking for promotions, those years go by quickly and you never make them up. And so, it's very important, and we're seeing that now, that you've got some cash to live on while you're trying to get your feet back under you. So if you've lost a job, don't worry about your 401k this week. But the minute that you can, and you get another job, start working on those dual priorities of putting some cash aside in the emergency fund so you get that one, topped back up. And then you can start slowly putting more money away in a 401k. One good thing that I think millennials have really forced employers to do is they've forced them to really step up because of competitive reasons. And so benefit programs now have generous contributions for the most part to 401ks. There's a push in Congress to make paying down student loans tax deductible to companies as well. And there are a lot of other initiatives that are going on, benefits that companies provide that at the end of the day really mean more cash in an employee's pocket. So lots of good things there to keep in mind as you're rebuilding your life after COVID.
How do I know? Go for it.
Let me add one thing, Rabbi, to play off what Ron was saying. I'm not in the lending business, but I refer a lot of my clients to mortgage brokers, and hearing this very frequently now. A lot of my newer clients, who are people actually from your age, millennials, that are looking to move out of the city now after what's transpired. And what I'm hearing from the lenders who they're talking about is the people that are able to move out have a substantial amount of funds in the savings or a protective fund instead of investments that have really taken a big fall in terms of playing the stock market. So what Ron's saying is it's so important to have, a safety net somewhere. And especially if you're going to be buying a house, there's always expenses that are incurred when you own a house.
How do I know? We had a question from a friend at the congregation, newly married, newly became a parent. How do I know, Elise, how to establish my budget in this climate. Where do I make my cuts? Where do I continue spending perhaps some large spends throughout the month? What's your guidance there?
So the easiest thing in the world to do, it's a lot easier than trying to say, okay, I'm going to spend 10% of my money here and 15% here. I just think take everything off the table, blank piece of paper, and now let's start with the things that you absolutely have to have. You have to have a roof over your head. You may have to have childcare, transportation to your job, although that's probably low at the moment. It's going to come back. Food, it's the basics, food, shelter, insurance, those pieces of your puzzle that you absolutely can't do without. And those all go down first on your piece of paper. And now take a look at what you have left, right? Because that's really where the rest of the spending comes from. There are too many people, and not to pick on millennials or Gen Z, because I think you just don't have enough experience yet, but lifestyle is so important to this generation, right? I need my weekly massage. I have to go to every wedding I'm invited to. I, have to stay in a nicer hotel. I need, right? Rather than, what does that need really mean? And I think for a lot of people, this is going to be a massive reawakening of what really the difference is between wants and needs, right? In my very first book, 100 questions every first-time homebuyer should ask, and Ted, you'll appreciate this. The very first question for so many years was, what do I want in a house and what's my reality check? Wish list, reality check. So wish list everything you've ever wanted. Wow, dream big, HGTV, everything you've ever seen. Reality check, everything you can't live without. And I mean, the without part is the emphasized part. So I think this is one of those times where your wish list of your lifestyle, everything you really want to have, great. What really can't you live without? And I think if you start there, that's the basics of being realistic with your budget, with your money. And I think there's a lot of places to go after that.
Lisa, I'm going to have all my clients talk to you before we start looking at houses.
Okay, you send them my way.
What are you seeing?
It's such a good point, though, Elise, because of course, when I meet with them and we start talking, they have a wish list. But the reality is it's impossible, not impossible, but when people have a budget, especially younger people, you have to cut some of the things that really aren't a necessity. And like you said, the want or the needs is really important. So maybe location is more important than having a new updated kitchen. A lot of HGTV, as you use the example, that's what everyone wants, a new remodeled house. You know what? There's not that many of them. And the ones that are remodeled, they're expensive. You pay a premium for it. So, you have to pick and choose what's important. So I totally agree with you, Elise.
Ron, I saw you smile in part of what Elise said. What resonated for you there?
Well, so, we're not on our first house. We're on our, fifth or sixth house. I hope the last one, but I know as time went on, we picked the house that was right for us at that time. And lo and behold, as kids came along and things changed, the house we needed changed. So the thought that you could figure out exactly what's the perfect house at that time probably wasn't right. Life's going to change. And so, going back, you just need to be a little thoughtful about what you really need at that time. Now I'm older and the kids have kind of moved out, and we picked our house based on where we would get locked in for a pandemic. So lucky us, right? I mean, that's how we did it.
This program caught a lot of people in the midst of regular life. And so there were a number of questions that came in, and I'll direct this to each of you, each in your own space, that there were people who said, Ron, I was searching for a new job 2 months ago, and then all of this happened. How do I respond now to that job search that I had a strategy before this pandemic, what's changed? There were people, Ted, who said, I was searching for a home. I was looking to get out of mom and dad's house. I was looking at both the rental market and perhaps purchasing that beautiful home with the white kitchens in the suburbs. How does this pandemic change? Elise, there are people who we were budgeting, we were navigating our student loans, we were navigating what our life plans might look like. And like everybody else in the world, this feels like something dropped here and really changed the course of where we were. So I'm curious, Ron, what do you tell someone who 2 months ago began their job search and here they are? What's your advice?
Well, so there's two groups of people, right? So there are people that have a job and were looking hard at changing what they were doing, right? And there are those that maybe were out of a job for one reason or another. They're coming out of school, they've got tired of what they were doing and decide now they're going to roll the dice and make a change, things like that, right? And so, and I'm far from an expert in this area, but for those that have a job, I would say, keep the job, and you can certainly continue to look for things, but I wouldn't leave a job now without something in hand. I don't think I would make that risk. The newspapers are devastating at this point, right? The numbers are not good. Having said that, we work with our economists, and I listen to the news as best I can. What the economists talk about is a drop, and I'm not sure how steep it's going to be, but that first quarter next year is going to be better, so that you are going to have time at some point to do that new job. What kind of jobs are going to be hot in what market? That's a little bit different, right? I mean, I think people with experience in certain areas in cloud, I think, can write a ticket right now, and probably for the foreseeable future. So I think it depends on what kind of things you want to do. Having said all that, your best chance, I think, of finding a job is networking with everyone you know and everyone who knows someone you know who knows someone you know. Firms are getting deluged with all sorts of resumes and blind offerings. And while it's not necessarily simple or easy, your best chance is knowing somebody who knows somebody that may know an opportunity that's coming up. That's your best thing. And I think for those on the phone that are, or on the Facebook, that are, just out of school looking for something, or relatively new in their job search, you have connections. You just don't think about it, right? I mean, maybe not the connection who's your roommate in school, although that may be a great one, but your parents' friends and friends of your parents' friends. So there is a network here, and I think by and large people want to help people. But I do think that we're in a bit of a trough now, but things will come out. I really do, and I think it just takes a lot of we used to call it shoe leather. Now I'm not sure what happens when you're locked in your house doing it on the internet, but I do think there's a lot of chasing that you can do in contacting, networking.
Ted, what do you say to the person who was searching for that home, or perhaps transitioning between lease to lease? What's your advice in this current climate?
Well, I think we had spoken, Rabbi, and I'm telling you, it's interesting being out in the suburbs. I'm feeling right now a lot of activity, people me calling my colleagues. I'm with App Properties. We have a big presence in the city. Those agents are calling because a lot of people in Chicago are looking to move out of the city and come out to the suburbs after being stuck in the city, stuck in maybe a small condo, even a townhome, and they don't have the space. So I feel like there's going to be a nice bit of activity moving forward in the suburbs, people wanting to get out and buy a house. Same with renting. There's been a number of houses for rent in the market, and those actually have been being swept up pretty quickly lately. People are looking for even short-term leases right now just to get out of the city during the pandemic. They just they have little kids, they want to have space. But the reality is if you can afford to buy a house, I was talking earlier, my first suggestion is talk to a mortgage broker and see what you can afford. But I think now is a really good time. We were sort of at a downswing coming into this, and I feel like the market is at a good place to buy. Obviously, there's some uncertainty with the economy right now, but the reality is if you can afford a house, now is really a good time to buy. And I feel like there's going to be a good amount of movement moving forward in terms of the suburbs, seeing the number of sales transpiring.
And if I can just add on to that, you know, the North Shore in particular has really not seen the kind of bounce back that the rest of the country has seen. And so there are properties available in Glencoe that are selling for less than people paid 20 to 25 years ago. And they are in much better shape than they were 20 or 25 years ago. People are taking large losses. And so if you're thinking about renting or buying, mortgage rates hit an all-time low last week. You are seeing an increase that in the credit scores that lenders are requiring and in the down payments that some are requiring. And so you're going to have a better degree of financial wherewithal. But if you can swing that and you've got good credit, this may be a once in a generation opportunity to buy in at pretty much some of the lowest per square foot prices that I think anybody has seen. I'm sure, Ted, that's true for you, but particularly in the North Shore, that anybody has seen in a very, very long time. And so there are some interesting opportunities for those people who are moving out. And it's not just only happening here. New York is seeing an extraordinary number of people looking to leave and go to any suburb in any direction. You're seeing it a little less out in San Francisco and Los Angeles, the West Coast, and in the South, where you really can be outside more of the year. But COVID kind of hit at a time when everybody was trapped in their houses anyway. And, you know, we've had a great early spring, so not knocking that, but you are seeing in the North and Northeast, particularly, people who have been trapped in houses looking for ways to move to suburbs. And that's sort of a remarkable reversal of what the millennials had taught us.
Thank you. I'm wondering, Elise, if you could speak to the questions around student loan, right, and our student debt. I know that interest rates have dropped thanks to the CARES Act. Those in forgiveness programs will not be paying through at least September. What's your advice for those of us that are planning to spend down our student debt here now?
Right. So it's really important to understand what the CARES Act covers and doesn't cover, or you're going to get yourself into trouble. So for federally backed student loans, which admittedly is a larger portion of the market, your loans went into automatic forbearance, not forgiveness, automatic forbearance, meaning that you don't have to make a payment for the next 12 months. There will be no negative reporting to your credit history on that, so your credit score shouldn't take a hit. We'll see if everybody's technology talks to each other in the right way, but that's the goal. And if you do make, and the interest is effectively dropped to zero. So if you are in a position to continue making your payments, 100% of your payment will go to paying down the balance of that loan. The forgiveness is very interesting. So since Betsy DeVos took over, there was a program for forgiveness for people who were going into not-for-profits that the Obama administration went into effect during the Obama administration. And unfortunately, Betsy DeVos has sort of slammed the brakes down on that, and there have been some lawsuits around those programs. The concept to those programs were, if you work for a not-for-profit, or if you work for, if you're a policeman or a fire person, fire safety, or a paramedic, that those loans would be forgiven after 10 years of paying on them, provided you were paying on time. That program has had some problems, but lawsuits have helped get it started again. We'll have to see when all this is over what's going on. Now, if you have a private student loan and some federal student loans, those that are not covered under this new forbearance program, and you stop making your payments, you will be reported as late and ultimately in default for those. So please contact your loan service provider to find out what they are doing and what the requirements are. Because it's fine if you've got one of the federal student loans that's covered, but even there, it's the best thing you can do is go to ed.gov and check to see whether your federal student loan is covered there. And if not, contact your own private lender. You can go to their website, see what they offer there, call up the servicing number, and find out what you have to do to go there, because there's no sense in tanking your credit simply because you didn't realize you had a private student loan or a non-covered federal student loan.
Thank you. Thank you. Very helpful in clarifying all of those different situations, because it is hard to know for sure what boat each of us are in that repayment and in those programs.
Yep.
I think about Torah often. One of the stories of the great catastrophe, the great world catastrophe is of course that of the flood, and of Noah, in which Noah builds the ark. He's warned that the great flood is coming, and survives with 2 animals of every kind and Noah's family on this ark. Noah finds that the flood is going to be over, the pandemic washed away, when he sees the rainbow in the sky. When he sees that symbol of the rainbow, he knows that there's hope. He knows that there is a tomorrow. He knows that this will pass. I'm curious for each of you, I know we haven't fully uncovered what the situation is yet, and things are still unfolding, but I'm wondering what signs you're looking for to know that we are journeying deeper into this situation, and perhaps even what might the end look like. What are these signs that you're looking for in each of your the work that you're doing? Let's say, Elise, I saw a smile, perhaps an answer.
I don't know about an answer. My job as an armchair economist is to sort of look at trend lines. In the last 6 weeks, 30 million Americans have lost their jobs. I would love to say that was the end of it. And next week, we're only going to have 100,000 people applying for unemployment for first-time benefits. But I don't think that's the case yet. I think we have a ways to go. And while certainly having 3 million people apply for first-time unemployment benefits is better than 6.6 million people in a single week, it's nowhere near a normal number. I mean, we're already far beyond where we were at the Great Recession 10 years ago, and we're now hurtling, I should say, towards depression level, something that we haven't seen in 80, 90 years, that nobody, any of our ages has any firsthand experience with. And even our parents in their 80s don't have experience with this. So, what we have to see is I think really that we're in a place we've never been in our lifetimes, and even before, because, back in the Depression, we didn't have so much of what we have now, right? It was single earners, single income. We didn't have really women in the workforce. We hadn't had World War II yet. I mean, there were a lot of, obviously no social media. People didn't have cars, didn't fly around everywhere. It was a completely different world. How we're going to get back to work and how long it takes for us to become employed could take a couple of years. And so what I'd like to do first is stop seeing these insane numbers of first-time unemployment. I'd like to not have 30% of the United States unemployed. I'd like to see the world go back to work. And I'd like to see us all begin to take those steps back of trusting that if we go to a restaurant or we go to our hairstylist or we go to shul, that we're not going to die for that. And until we have some confidence, I think it's a little bit hard to understand where that rainbow is.
Thank you. Ted, what about you? How would you respond to that?
Well, it's hard in my industry just because what happens is we have comparables on our sales. So we base all the values of our homes on prior sales. So until things keep progressing, we aren't really going to be able to tell what the market values, how they're going to react. Right now, as I had mentioned, we're seeing half the amount of showings that there were last year at this time. But obviously now everyone's looking online. So that's not really a good indicator. I am still seeing, I'd say about a 10% drop in the number of houses that have gone under contract versus this year, this time from last year. So it's about a 10% drop. And I feel like until this uncertainty is moved forward, we really can't tell. So I guess the answer to your question is once we can all go out and we're not at a stay, I think then it will help the real estate market in terms of progress quicker. But for right now, I feel like that's really going to be the true test, is once people don't have to stay at home. We'll see how many people are able to go out and look at houses. And again, what Elise mentioned, the economy and the amount of, now people have uncertainty with their job and their financial, standings. There's going to be a little tough road, and hopefully everyone will come through and will be stronger when we get out of it. As I mentioned, feel like the suburbs will have a boost, which will be helpful, especially to the North Shore. Again, what Elise was saying, because the values are really when you look at per square foot costs, they are at a very low point.
Ron, what about you? What are the signs and symbols that you're looking for along this journey, this road ahead?
So thanks for letting me go last. That was helpful. I can try to sort this out. I think there's a couple things going on, right? So at least, so we have this pandemic, and I think we have to realize that we don't know what the other side looks like yet, right? I mean, I think you're going to be talking about the world sort of pre-COVID-19 and the world after COVID-19, similar to 9/11, frankly. I mean, I think, maybe people just a little bit younger than you don't remember that, you didn't go through all that security to get on a plane. And by the way, it was okay to bring a knife that wasn't only above a certain size to get on a plane. So all those things existed then. The world changed pretty dramatically in how we do it. I think that's what we're seeing now, right? That's happening, and we're watching it happen again in a pretty dramatic way. And I don't think we really know all the reverberations of that. I think there's a pandemic piece of it. I mean, we were joking that 15 years from now you go to a Halloween party and say I'm dressing like 2020, and you'll wear a mask, right? That'll be, or else maybe everybody will have a bubble helmet, because we're all in masks at that point, breathing our own machines. So I think there's that kind of thing, and I don't know when we're going to get out of that. I do think you have to, as Lisa and Ted have said, you have to be comfortable in knowing that I can actually go out and not risk my life getting my hair cut or anything like that.
Yeah, tell me about it.
Well, of course, I have the same problem there, right? So, but then going in, Ted's laughing too. So going in farther out, though, I mean, I think I mentioned earlier, I work a lot in South Korea. South Korea, they have, as a country, adjusted pretty dramatically to the new normal. So they know this isn't over. They have adopted a way of working and living where this is just the new normal for them. People allow themselves to be tracked by apps on the phone for contact. That's something that I think will have some serious hurdles here in the United States. And so there are countries that are going to deal with this differently, but all of these countries are tied in together, whether we like it or not. Half the people watching this may be watching from a tablet that's from Samsung or LG on our TV or something like that, and that's Korea. And by the way, those components may have come from Japan or China or all these different places, right? So we're all sort of locked together, and I don't know what the answer is. I don't know what that rainbow looks like. I do know that it's going to be different. I know that that, and I'm cautiously optimistic that we're going to be fine out of it, but I do know that there will be winners and losers, and I think that we have to recognize that and realize that some support systems that maybe we haven't given enough attention to are more needed than they've ever been, and I'm hopeful that's going to work out pretty well for us.
I want to thank you again at the end. I want to thank all of you for your analysis, for your honesty, for really the care that you demonstrate for our community, both our young professionals who have asked these questions, but also the entire community of North Shore Congregation of Israel. It's a real gift that we're all able to learn with you this afternoon. I want to end in a place, a real practical place. I think that Rabbi Geffen has spoken about this often. I believe she'll speak about this again soon, that in these times of great fear, in these times of scarcity, as our inclination is to turn inward and to become passive, to form this narrative of victim to the world that's unfolding around us, I'm wondering where we might claim some agency. I'm wondering the actual things that each of us can do to better prepare ourselves, to better contribute to our communities, whether that's right now, or perhaps that's also, God willing, after this pandemic has passed. So again, what are the practical do's that each of us can do now to better prepare for the present and perhaps also our future? And let's go Ted and Ron and Elise, just because that's the order you're on my screen.
Well, I'm a true believer. You're saying what we can do. And I think first and foremost is to help others and help people in need. And that's sort of what I've been trying to do, is reach out to especially elderly people, trying to help them in terms of if they need groceries, what they may need. And I think that's really what I'm finding is the best part of this bad situation we're all in, is that there's so many people out there doing for others. And it's really nice to see everyone pitching in, coming together at this time. I think the real estate market will go on, and I think it will be fine. And I think Elise and Ron both hit it, that it's important to watch your spendings. And I love the wants versus needs. That's not only for a house, but vacations and all that type of thing. I think people are now going to start realizing that their needs are going to have to come first before their wants.
Ron, what about you?
So I adapt my theory of life from an airplane commercial, which is put your mask on and then help others. And in this case, maybe it fits more literally than intended, right? So I think what we're seeing is some amazing generosity out there and unselfishness, and I think it's great. But I would tell people we talked earlier about do they have the 3 months of cash? I would tell people to be thoughtful and put themselves in their most solid position they can, because that's when you can really help others without worry, with a clear conscience. And I think as Ted said, he's able to help others. I think there's a lot of people out there that are doing good things for a lot of people, and I think that's critical to continue. And the only way that's going to happen is that you've sort of taken care of yourself, and that's not only fiscally but mentally. I mean, I think people, a lot of the people that work for us, what we're finding is they're putting way more hours in. They're not having the same sort of break. People are working much harder. They may not be wearing pants, but they are working much harder. And I think
my people are all wearing pants.
That's what you think, but we're gonna put that aside for a second. But I think people are working a lot harder. I think people have in their head sometimes that they have those that have jobs that have time off. Well, I can't go anywhere. I can't use that time off. Well, that's wrong. You can take the time off. Now, it may mean that you're not going to take any calls from your office. You're going to go in your living room, or you're going to go someplace else. But maybe it just means you're going to turn your computer off and read a book. And I think it's important for people to take care of themselves, to get outside if they can, to get some exercise if they can, because I think the best way for you to help others is to make sure you're in solid shape. And I think it's easy to forget that, and I'm hoping people are thinking about that.
Thank you. Thank you. Elise, what about you? What's your practical advice for us as we navigate today and prepare for the future?
Well, I first think that what Ron and Ted have said is exactly right. And I echo everything they've said. I think I would add that I want people to start looking to the future again. I want you to set goals. I want you to think about what you want to do, not what you want to spend, right? I hear a lot of people saying, oh, I want to go to a restaurant. I want to go, buy this, or I want to, I need to do this, again, with the needs and the wants. But I think the longer term goal setting is a really effective thing that some people have forgotten. It's useful, right? To write down what you want to do and some ways of reverse engineering how you're going to get there. So, take a look out. If you don't have a job, in 3 months, you want to have a job. In 6 months, you want to buy a house in the next 2 to 3 years. Well, how are you actually going to get to those things? I've heard a lot of people talk about, oh, I wish I could knit like that. Okay, go learn. I'm amazed at the lessons for free on the internet and what you can learn how to do from, your very own home. Want to bake bread? Go bake bread. In fact, I'm baking bread with my son this afternoon. Take the time, for those of us who have had adult children come home, enjoy those moments, right? Because they're fleeting. My son can't wait to start his job. He was supposed to start in June. Now it's September. He's just kind of hanging around and helping out. And I'm trying to spend every minute I can with him because I know that he's going to go and buy his first place, probably a condo in the city, Ted, sorry. And he'll be off, and that'll be the end of this special time together. And so enjoy today, enjoy the moments where you can, plan for tomorrow. And it's just going to all get here faster than you can imagine. That's it. And watch more Star Trek, because it's happier than Terminator.
Ron would agree, I'm sure. That's, again, thank you. Thank you for offering your professional wisdom. Thank you for offering really from your heart and your head as you look to all of us in our community and offer such great advice as we're navigating these days and responding to this current climate. I really appreciate it. And all of our panelists have agreed. Should you have any questions, any other questions for any of our experts, please do email me, Rabbi Daniels at nsci.org, or you can go ahead and write a comment on our Facebook post, and I'll make sure to relay those to our panelists. They're so generous in extending this conversation, and for that, I also want to thank you. Please go ahead and like us on Facebook, like us on Instagram, check out our website, nsci.org/bettertogether to see our complete menu of offerings and programs that we are providing here in this virtual space. And God willing, one day soon, we will do so in person. Again, thank you so much. I'd say Shavua Tov, a great week to all of you, and to everybody who's watching us. Thank you. Thanks again for joining me.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Thank you.